Hey stop motion class. Today we're just going to review some things that most of you probably already know as far as how to use the app, but I know several of you probably haven't picked it up in a few weeks and might need just a refresher on where some of the buttons are, how many frames per minute or per second we're animating at, things like that. Also, for the parents who just want to be aware of how the app is used, this will be useful to you if you haven't picked it up yet, but you feel like you might need to help your student troubleshoot a little bit. I'm also going to give you just a couple of tips on how to animate with a paper puppet, because it is largely the same as animating with a clay puppet, but there are a few differences and a couple of things that will make it easier for you. I'm also working on an iPad, which means that my menus might look a little bit different than yours, but they should basically be the same. All of the icons should look roughly the same. So hopefully watching me go through it on my iPad will help you be able to navigate it with yours. So look for your stop motion app, which is, it's this blue one with the camera. Go ahead and open it. If you find that you're already in a scene, down here in the bottom left-hand side is that little arrow there. You can just click that to go back. And now you can go to New Movie. And here you can see what I've got on my desk here. This is one of the scenes that my kids will be using. I left this margin here so that I could glue my scene together. But if you want to use tape, it's totally fine. Whatever you want to put your set together with is up to you. Just make sure that if you use tape, you do it on the back, because even a clear tape will pick up the light differently than your paper, and you'll have this weird strip in the middle of your scene. So for me, I've left this margin to go ahead and glue it. Most of the scenes were photographed with the props already in them. There are a couple of props that you might need to cut out if you need like the hay or the gold. But in this case, I've got the throne. And I think these are really the only two instances where you may need to do something about the prop in your scene. But when you have the queen sitting on the throne, and I've got the miller's daughter here because that's one of the puppets that my kids need, you're going to want them to be sitting on the throne, kind of overlapped by it, not just on top of it. So what I did is I took an X-Acto knife and I just cut the photograph right along the edge of where I would want the throne to be overlapped. So I've got this little flap here that when it's down, you really can't even tell, but I can also lift it up and put a puppet inside of it. So the miller's daughter looks like she's sitting on the chair, not in front of the chair. I've gone ahead and switched out my background because I'm going to be doing our demonstration with the miller's daughter, and this is one of her scenes right here. Notice that I left a 1/4 inch margin all along my scene here so that I can go ahead and tape it down. But if you didn't, don't worry about it. You can just take your tape and roll it up like this and stick it at the bottom of one of your corners to tape your scene down. But do make sure that you tape it down, because if you don't, you will almost definitely start moving it around throughout animating, and that can be very frustrating, having to constantly realign everything. So just a little preemptive action saves a lot of frustration. I think I'm going to tape mine down right here because I messed up that little window section there. I'm going to have a weird shadow. And then right here. Now I have my camera set a little farther out so that you guys can see what's going on around my set if I need you to. But make sure that you adjust your camera to be at the proper height so that all you can see in your picture plane is the scene. This is what your picture plane should look like. Try not to include any of the margins around your picture plane when you are animating. Now I've got the Miller's Daughter here, and she is a character that's not walking around. So I don't want her to be constantly moving all over my scene as I'm making little adjustments. It's very easy to actually accidentally move them. So if your puppet is not walking across the scene, then roll up a little piece of tape like this and put it in a part of the puppet that's not going to be affected by the tape. So don't put it across a joint here or up here or over an arm. Put it in kind of a broad part of the puppet that you can just tape down. And then you can push it down like this. Have her set up the way you want her to set up. Okay, she's in a sitting position now. I think I'm going to start animation just like that. So for our demonstration, I'm just going to animate a fairly quick scene with a little bit of lip syncing so you guys have a basic overview of how to do your own scenes in the Stop Motion Studio app. First thing I want to do when I'm setting up a scene, after I've set up the scene, before I start animating, is to check my frames per second. We are going to animate at 12 frames per second. Stop Motion Studio tends to have an auto set for 5 frames per second. So go to the little gear icon in the menu at the bottom, and then you'll see the little speedometer looking icon. That's our frames per second slider, and then just slide across till you get to 12 frames per second and hit done, and you're good to go. Now our little puppet here doesn't have a mouth yet. And this is a good opportunity to talk about a couple of tools that I like to use. I've got my handy dandy tweezers here, and also a little sewing needle. If you don't want to use these, that's totally fine. It's really up to you what you choose to use. If your fingers are very nimble, then you may prefer to use your fingers. However, because of the size that we're working with, our mouths are very small. So I kind of like to just go to where I'm keeping my mouth and I stab it with the needle to pick it up. It's easier for me with my fingers. And then I like to place it on her mouth. So I'm going to give her a little frown here. Now when you start animating with these little mouths, what you're going to notice is that as you move the body parts around, your mouth is going to have a tendency to want to move as well because they're so small, and sometimes even breathing can move them out of place. So because it's such an issue, I have a repositionable glue stick that I like to use for my mouth. You can use it on your eyelids too if you want to, although typically the eyelids aren't on there often enough to worry about it too much. So I'm going to pick my mouth up here. In this case, it might just be a little bit easier to grab them with my finger. I'm going to stick it on the glue. Remember, it's not just any glue stick. This is a repositionable glue stick. If you use a regular glue stick, your mouth is going to get stuck and you're going to tear your puppet up. So make sure it's a repositionable glue stick. I'm putting her mouth right there. And she's going to be frowning because she's sad, because the king is very unreasonable. All right. So there goes my glue stick. Now I'm going to start making small movements. But how do I know for sure how small or how big my movements are? You can use the tool called onion skin. It's the slider over here on the left side of the screen. I'm just going to take that and I'm going to slide it down, and now you can see how my hand looks ghostly. If I slide it up, my hand is solid. And I bring it back down, my hand is ghostly. So it's always comparing it to the very last photograph you took with the scene that you're on right now. Now I can see, because of my onion skin, that my arm has moved already a little bit. I think I did that just a second ago. I've moved my arm a little bit. Remember, the smaller the movement you make, the slower the animation is going to be. If you make a big movement, that animation, that's going to be really fast, and I don't want her to move that fast, okay? So I'm watching in my onion skin to see how fast or slow my animation is going to be. And now I'm just making a little movement. I get my hands out of the way, take a picture. I'm going to do a little bit of anticipating animation as her hands go up a little bit. Whoops. I'm going to pull her head back just a little bit to anticipate that she's going to go forward. Keep going. Small movements, paying attention to my onion skin. Notice how I hold her body down in places where I don't really want her to be moving. This helps. This helps keep the whole thing from moving. I know I have her taped down, but it's sometimes easy for other little minor parts of the body to move. So even though I have her taped down, I'm still stabilizing her with my fingers. Okay, now that I've got her body in the position that I want it to be, I'm just going to take a few pictures so that it will hold her there and it looks like she's pausing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The reason I did 12 pictures is because I want her to pause for about 1 second before she starts putting her hands down and lifting her head again. And we're animating at 12 frames per second. So I'm thinking about the amount of time I want an animation to take, and I'm calculating that based on our 12 frames per second. So 1 second of pause equals 12 photographs in that position. I'm going to start lip syncing. You can add the repositionable glue to the back of every single mouth if you would like to. This is particularly helpful if you're lip syncing while you're animating the body. However, because I'm going to keep her body pretty much in the same position while I'm lip syncing, I'm not going to worry about the repositionable glue this time because I'm just going to be switching mouths out, taking pictures, switching mouths out, taking pictures. I'm also going to go ahead and move to a close-up for her lip syncing just so you guys can see how that process works. Whenever you move from a long shot to a close-up or a close-up to a long shot, start a new scene. This will make it a lot easier for editing later on. So I'm going to do my little back arrow. I'm going to come back into my main menu and then click New Movie with the big plus over here in the upper left-hand corner. Now I'm going to dismiss the tip. Now I'm going to zoom in on my character here. And I'm going to take a couple pictures like this just so that she doesn't go immediately into talking. That gives me a little bit of a cushion to edit with later on, but also it's more natural because you don't necessarily switch the scene just exactly at the moment that they start talking. So now I'm going to take my little frown off. We're not going to go with the exact phonemes, the perfect shape of the mouth to every sound. We're going to do our quick trick for lip syncing, which is just to switch out the mouth and take a picture. Switch to another mouth, take a picture. Switch to another mouth, take a picture. And with a series of random mouths going through every picture, it's just sort of a lip syncing cheat. And it will look very much like she is saying whatever it is we are speaking. It's always a good idea to go ahead and speak the line first so that you have a good idea of how long it's going to take. Also keep in mind the kinds of pauses that you might have. So if she says, I have to spin the straw into gold or I die. She might pause between I have to spin the straw into gold and when she says or I die. So when she pauses, I'm going to close her mouth again. I'm going to take a few pictures, maybe blink her eyes, and then I'm going to go back into animating with her mouth again. This will give her a natural pause. So she doesn't need to say her entire line all in one fell swoop. That's not really natural. We tend to talk in pauses. Also keep in mind that living things blink. Just make sure that her eyelids are on for 3 of your animating frames. When I want to begin to record, I can go to a scene, click a scene, and then down here in almost the left, seconds to left, bottom is the little microphone icon, and it pulls up this menu, and then I can click the record button. It'll give me a countdown to when I start, and I can make my recording. I have to spin the straw into gold by tomorrow, or I die. Now I can, if I want to edit my audio, if for instance I don't like what I've done, I can click on the frame that has the little note. Notice how the frame over here, it has that little note. Click on the frame with the note. The menu will pull up and then you can click on audio. And you can play I have to spin the straw into gold by tomorrow, or I die. All right, now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and start adding mouths and changing them out. I've already removed one mouth. Now I'm going to add another one. Because she's not moving, I'm not going to worry about the glue. I'm just going to go ahead and switch mouths out right now. And using my onion skin, I can see her head moved more than I would like it to. All right, now I've repositioned it. I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to move that mouth off, put another one in there. Take a picture, make sure my hands are out of the way. And I'm going to keep going like this over the course of however many seconds I need for her lip syncing. Okay, so I've gone through a lot of lip syncing at this point. What you can do too is if you go ahead and record your audio on a frame, you can start on the frame you want to begin speaking on and then test it out. Press play. I have to spin the straw into gold by I have to spin the straw into gold by and you can see I haven't quite gotten to the end of my sentence. So I'm going to keep adding some more lips. But I also want to do a blink in here. She hasn't blinked the whole time that I've been talking. So I'm going to go ahead and add my little circles for the eyelids. You know, again, sometimes the paper likes to get stuck to my fingers. I think your oils like to kind of hang on to them a little bit. So the sewing needle is really handy for just getting things into position without having to worry about them sticking on you. When I do this, I'm going to take a picture with my eyelids closed, and I'm going to keep moving my mouths out as I take a picture because I'm not pausing in my speech when my eyelids are closed. I'm blinking, but I'm still talking, or my puppet is still talking. So I'm going to add another mouth, take a picture, and I'm going to do it for one more mouth because I want the blinks to be at least 3 photographs long, so that your viewer can see that she is actually blinking. So I'm going to add one more mouth in here. Give her a little O. With her eyelids closed. Now I've moved her head a little bit, so I'm going to check for any changes. Her eyelid came up a little. Put that back into place. All right, everything looks good. Take my last picture, and now I can go ahead and remove her eyelids because she's done blinking. A blink is almost instantaneous to us when we look at it, but it really does have to take a little bit of time in your camera for it to be visible. And then I'm going to go back to adding some more mouths. I was getting close to the end of that part of my sentence, so I'm going to go ahead, take one more picture. I'm going to test it out, see where my speech is. I have to spin the straw into gold by tomorrow. I have to spin the straw into gold by tomorrow. Okay, so I'm not quite at the end of my speech. I'm going to go back to adding some more mouths, and then I'm going to pause with the pause in my speech, and then I'll go back to lip syncing again. All right, so now I've pretty much finished the lip syncing. I'm going to test it again. Or I die. I have to spin the straw into gold by tomorrow, or I die. Okay, so you can see how with a whole bunch of random mouths and keeping in mind the timing of everything, just as far as where the speech begins, where it pauses, where it ends, I can give a really good lip synced look, even though I wasn't technically lip syncing, I was just putting random mouths in. Now I'm going to finish this out with a closed mouth, and I'm going to give it a couple of pictures so that she's got a pause at the end of her speech. And now maybe I'll go ahead and finish out the scene with a blink because she's sad. I haven't cut any tears out, but you could just cut a little, just a little tiny piece of white paper if you wanted to have a tear roll down her cheek when she's sad or something. And give her, maybe I'll have her head start to go down a little bit because she's sad. Keep taking those pictures. Now I'm going to leave it there. Take a few pictures. And now let's check out what our scene looks like. We're going to scroll all the way back to the beginning, and we're going to turn off our onion skin and play it one more time. I have to spin the straw into gold by tomorrow, or I die. I have to spin the straw into gold by tomorrow, or I die. So I started animating her getting up off of the stool so that I can show you how to do a little bit of a walk. Now her walk it'll be kind of limited because we don't have the limbs for the top of her legs because she's attached to her skirt. But that's okay, just do the best kind of walk that you can. But I'm going to make the movements that I need to make while holding things in place that I don't necessarily want to move. So maybe I'll move her foot back a little bit because I'm thinking about how she's going to support herself when she gets up. And here she is moving to get up. I held the foot in place. I'm going to keep. So she's stepping up onto this foot. And then this foot, it's going to move forward because it's going to have to catch her when she goes to start taking her first step, which she's about to do. So I'm going to hold this one in place because I want it to stay on the floor there. She's putting her weight on it as she's moving forward. So moving her whole body. Now this foot here is where I want it to be when it's planted on the ground. I'm going to take a picture. And now I'm going to hold this foot in place as I move the rest of her body like this. And her foot here is going to come up a little bit. And I'm going to move this foot. So I think I'm going to, right here. And this foot is going to have to come, and it's going to be moving forward to catch her. holding that other foot in place. Okay, now I'm going to hold this one in place because that's as far forward as I can manage to make that. I'm going to keep moving her in front. And this leg up a little bit because your leg will go back behind you as you start to move forward more than before it moves forward again. And she is officially out of the scene. So take a few more pictures just to pause it at the end. And then let's turn off our onion skin, press play, and see what we've got here. She's got a little bit of a duck waddle because of her feet. Fortunately, the miller's daughter does not really need to be doing any walking in any of the scenes. Rumpelstiltskin will, and the miller will. But you kind of get the idea of how to do a little bit of a walk with these puppets. All right, guys, that's it for our demo. I hope that that was helpful. We will be spending the next 3 weeks finishing out Rumpelstiltskin and all of the animation. Please do a little bit every week. This way you won't be overwhelmed at the end of the school year. And please upload them to Google Classroom as you finish your scenes. This way I can start collecting them and I can work on editing them because there will almost definitely be things that I need to adjust here and there to make sure everything looks consistent from scene to scene. In order to save your video to export, you can either click select, that's in the upper right hand corner, or you can choose the thumbnail you want and hold your finger down on it until it becomes selected and the menu shows up at the top. Then go to the little box with the up arrow, click export movie, and then you can save the video. And that should save it to your photos or wherever else you might put that. Then go ahead and upload it to your own YouTube account. If your video is small enough, Google Classroom will let you upload it directly to the stop motion class. However, if your video if it ends up being a few minutes long, I'm not really sure what the Google Classroom cutoff is, but if you're having trouble uploading it to Google Classroom, try uploading it to YouTube first and then giving me a link to your video. So I hope that that helps, and I'll talk to you guys soon. I have to spin the straw into gold by tomorrow, or I die.